It's because what I'm supposed to do. Let's see. Hello, everybody. Welcome in. I can see all your names popping up, but not your faces, which is okay. So we're just waiting for everyone to kind of trickle in. Welcome. We will get started in just a little bit. Hopefully, it seems like we have a nice crowd this evening. Luckily, none of us had to venture out in the torrential downpour that we're currently having downtown. So hopefully, any book title with, what is it, weird, wonderful, and obscure, my kind of book. So I'm excited to learn more along with all of you. We will do questions at the very end, but if you'd like, while you're thinking of it, comes to mind, whatever you like, the chat is enabled down at the bottom. Or if you have a specific question that you'd like answered, you can also put that in the Q&A and we'll address that at the very end of the talk. Yeah, so I think some people are still trickling in, but I like to get started rather promptly. And we are recording, so this will get put up on the HMI YouTube page, and then we'll send a link out to folks as well. So we'll do a little housekeeping at the beginning, and then I will turn it over to Jim, and he'll take it away. So welcome, everybody. I am Julia Griffith. I'm the program director here at Historic Milwaukee, and we're very thrilled to have you all virtually. I keep thinking that pre-2020, we used to do these in our store, and we'd cram like 12 people in, and it's not the same online. We don't like gather together in the same way, but we can host a lot more people. And I think we have great, robust discussions, and it's fun, when the weather is a little less than ideal nobody has to make a trek or whatever. But tonight we're very excited to have Jim Nelsen to talk about his book, Secret History of Milwaukee. And small caveat, which is you're going to hear about this great book and you're going to be like, Julia, I would like to buy a copy. I would like to sell you a copy. There are delays on the printing end of things. So we're currently still waiting. So we will also email you all when the book copies come in, and you can order them online or come into the store and pick them up. We're just not 100% sure exactly when they'll get to us, and we don't want to string you all along waiting and waiting and waiting. And our accountant thanks us for that a little bit. But we're hoping by the end of the month, we should have them or an update. So just to take care of that at the beginning. And like I said, you can put questions in the Q&A or in the chat. We'll address those at the end. But tonight I will now introduce our author, and then I'm going to turn off my camera so you won't see me, just Jim. But Jim Nelsen is a native Milwaukeean, lifelong resident, who is actually in his real life a high school social studies teacher, but a well-credentialed author on the side. This is your third book talk with us, or your third book in general, but third book talk with HMI. And so we're, collecting them all. And generally has a just fascination with history, urban life, Milwaukee's wacky and wonderful ways. Before we started, we were talking about the flags of Milwaukee as we have them, as pictured here. And we won't talk about baseball, but you are an avid baseball fan, so maybe there'll be a baseball story or two. We can all lament Craig leaving at the end. Anyway, welcome, Jim, virtually to everybody as well. And we're looking forward to hearing more about your book.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, and thank you everyone watching at home or wherever it is you are. I really appreciate you coming, and I hope you like the book. The book does exist. I'm holding it up, so it's just that there's been some delays on the printing. I actually was able to get a case of the books ahead of time, so I know they're actually coming. They're on the way. Fonzie's on the front cover because, of course, like, what are you going to do in a book about Milwaukee? So I too am actually going to turn off my camera just because I have a cat running around, and I prefer to have it not disrupt us. So there we go. And this is, again, welcome to the book talk on Secret History of Milwaukee. So the way this book works is there are 84 locations or stories in the book. Each book, or each story rather, gets a 2-page spread in the book. And this is a part of a series of books from Reedy Press. They're in St. Louis, and it's their Secret History series. And so it's their goal to have a secret history written for every city in the United States. And so they approached me a number of months ago. Hey, how would you like to write a book about Milwaukee? Because I've already written a couple of other things. And so I said, sure, why not? And so the idea behind Secret History is that everything that you read about in the book are things that you have driven past or walked past, but maybe you didn't know they were there, or maybe you knew they were there, but you didn't know like the full story behind it. So it's not that these are complete secrets. I mean, they're things that we know about, but it's just things that most people don't know about. So I'm going to take you through 10 of the locations, 10 of the stories in the book, and then we'll take questions at the end. So I'm going to start with an easy one because this is one that a lot of you in the audience probably know about. So this is Lake Emily over on the left. And Lake Emily, probably not really a lake, probably more of a pond. But Lake Emily, like 120 years ago or so, was like a swimming hole and a fishing hole and a place where early Milwaukeeans took their horses to get them water, that kind of thing. Basically, downtown was a swamp. All right, it was a rice marsh back in the day, and then gradually over time, the city of Milwaukee filled it in for development purposes. So over on the right, you can see Northwestern Mutual. That's like the original building, not the big office tower. The original building is still there. And when Northwestern Mutual built this building, they actually built it on top of Lake Emily, which is kind of cool. The building is held up in the water by a series of wood pilings, and the wood pilings are completely covered in water. If the wood pilings are ever exposed to oxygen, they will begin to rot. And then once they begin to rot, if they rot too much, they begin to collapse. If they begin to collapse, the whole building collapses on itself. So obviously, Northwestern Mutual does not want that to happen, which means they're constantly refilling the water that is basically in the basement. So we're talking about a sub-basement, like a basement below the basement. And you can actually visit this sub-basement and see a number of basically portholes that are, I don't know, around ping pong ball sized, that are in that sub-basement floor. And that's how they historically used to check the water level. What they do is they would open up one of these portholes, shine a light down there, and then see, well, like, has the water level fallen? Okay, then we need to put more water in. Nowadays, it's all scientifically measured with like modern instrumentation and everything, and it's pretty much a continuous flow of water going back into Lake Emily to keep the building from collapsing. This is a big destination for Historic Milwaukee Incorporated's Doors Open Milwaukee, the annual event that I'm sure probably all of you have participated in. If you haven't had a chance to go check out Lake Emily, definitely go do it, because it's not something that you get to see on an everyday basis. So that's Lake Emily. Another location here, City Hall. And again, City Hall, it's something that we've all probably seen before. But what you may not know is like the deeper history behind City Hall. So City Hall was originally built to look like a German public hall. And the architect who designed it built it to actually be the largest, well, the tallest building in the world, which was a record that it actually held for several years. It was constructed in the 1880s. And for close to 20 years was considered the tallest building in the world. Until eventually, not a big surprise, New York City put up another skyscraper, and then New York City took the Milwaukee record. But it is kind of neat. You can go up into the bell tower again during Doors Open Milwaukee, and you can actually take a turn at ringing the bell. The bell's name is the Solomon Juno. Yes, the bell has a name, and the bell is named after the first mayor of Milwaukee. So that's kind of another like secretive type thing that most people don't know about. And if you buy the book, you'll also find out about the number of people who have actually, unfortunately, plunged to their death at City Hall, which was a disturbingly common occurrence during the Great Depression. I mean, some people lost it all. They took matters into their own hands. So yeah, I won't tell you how many because obviously I want you to buy the book, but there's a pretty neat story behind that. And I do encourage you to go check it out. It is a ticketed event during Doors Open Milwaukee to go up there and ring that bell. But watch out for the wind shears. I've been up there. They're pretty fierce. Now, this is City Hall, okay? But here's something that confuses a lot of people. This is the town hall, right? So what's the town hall? Now, my wife, she grew up in Muskego, and she always tells me that if you're not from Milwaukee, that the city of Milwaukee and Milwaukee County are just like the same thing. It's all one thing. It's all Milwaukee to outsiders. But of course, if you live in Milwaukee County, then you know it's not all the same thing. So Milwaukee County is composed of the city of Milwaukee and more than a dozen other suburbs. But where do those suburbs come from and why are there two Milwaukees? And so I go through like the whole thing in my book. But the thing that most people don't know about is there is actually a third Milwaukee, and that's the old town of Milwaukee. Now, in order to understand this, you have to understand what the difference is between a city, a village, a county, and a town. I'm not going to go into great detail, but just generally speaking, cities and villages have enough people and enough of a tax base where they can provide essential services for themselves. So police, fire, running water, sewage, those are usually like the big ones. Eventually also public schools. Those are all important city services or village services that they provide for themselves. Now, counties are administrative units for basically the state of Wisconsin. They're how the state runs programs such as I don't know, like the court system, you know, is a very obvious one. The state runs the court system through the counties and through like the local courthouses. Well, within a county, like in Milwaukee County, again, you have a number of cities and villages. But in more rural counties are usually divided up into towns. And what a town is it's a limited form of self-government. It's a form of self-government where people in the town can provide some services to themselves, but they rely on the county for most of their services. So an example that I like to use when I'm teaching this to my kids at school is like, let's say someone commits shoplifting at Brookfield Square at the shopping mall. Well, who shows up? It's the city of Brookfield Police. But let's say somebody does the same thing at the Corners of Brookfield. So the Corners Shopping Center is in the town of Brookfield. It's not in the city of Brookfield. So since it's the town, that means it's the Waukesha County Sheriff's Department that's going to show up. Like that's how that works. So back in the 1830s, when Milwaukee was first really getting started, what you had the town of Milwaukee that encompassed initially the entire county except for the villages of Juneautown, Walker's Point, and Kilbourne Town, because those villages could basically provide services for themselves, and those villages eventually became the city of Milwaukee. So then over time, as the county's population grew, the town of Milwaukee got subdivided. So you get Lake, Granville, you get the town of Wauwatosa, you get the town of Greenfield, the town of Franklin, the town of Oak Creek. And there's a total of 7 towns within Milwaukee County, plus the city of Milwaukee back in 1846, when the city of Milwaukee incorporates. So this is what is left of the second town hall. You can tell it's a really small building, but this is where the old town of Milwaukee actually made laws and actually ran things. Like I said, it's not the first town hall, it's the second. It comes from the late 19th century. This is also not the original location. But most of what was the town of Milwaukee, and gradually over time, the towns got smaller and smaller and smaller as suburbs incorporated and they annexed town land. The city of Milwaukee spread out and also annexed a lot of town land. And then finally in the 1950s, the last of the towns ceased to exist. They either became villages or cities. So what was left of the town of Milwaukee, and there wasn't much by the 1950s, actually became the city of Glendale. And so once Glendale became a city, it took ownership over the old town hall, moved it from its old location to now its current location, which is next to the Glendale City Hall. You can visit if you want to, but the hours are very, very limited. They don't actually even have regular hours. They're just by appointment. So I suggest that you call ahead if you actually want to go inside, and you need to give them a significant amount of lead time so that they can have a staff person who can unlock the door and show you around. But it's kind of cool. The town of Milwaukee Hall is still around and you can visit it. Another cool old building. Trivia question. Sometimes I get asked this: what is the oldest building in the city of Milwaukee? And the answer is the St. Joan of Arc Chapel. The St. Joan of Arc Chapel, which is on the Marquette campus, is the oldest building, but the reason it's the oldest building is it's actually pre-Columbian. It's from before 1492. Now, you might wonder, how can that be? Did Native Americans build this chapel? It's a Christian chapel. Well, the answer is they didn't. Rather, this chapel was built in France, and legend is that it was built on the site that St. Joan of Arc prayed at. And so there's one. So what ended up happening was, long story short, is the chapel fell into disrepair. This is like a late medieval, early Renaissance kind of chapel. It fell into disrepair and was rediscovered rather in the early part of the 20th century. And eventually it made it over to the United States, first to New York, and then eventually it was gifted to Marquette University, came here brick by brick, and is for the most part reassembled the way it originally was, but with like modern heat, modern light, a modern floor, and that kind of thing. And so if you ever have the opportunity to see it, you should. There is one stone inside the chapel that is mysteriously colder than all other stones. Now, I'm not going to tell you the story behind why that stone is so much colder, but it is like significantly colder, and it is actually attributed to a miracle. So I'm just going to tell you that much because, of course, I want you to buy my book and read it over. But you can go visit it, and there's a docent available to take you on a tour. It does have regular visiting hours, and Marquette has like choir concerts, and it does have chapel services there on a regular basis. So check it out if you have time. And they'll tell you there that science cannot explain why this one stone is so much colder than everything else, and they will let you touch it. So check it out. Now, some sites in the book are sites that you can visit, but there's really nothing there anymore. And so this is one of those sites, or at least the original's not there. This is Edison Street. Edison Street was previously known as River Street. And you can still find it written that way on Google Maps. Google Maps will actually show Edison, then River, then Edison, then River, and they continue to alternate street names. So this was the old red light district. Now, prostitution 120 or so years ago was illegal in Milwaukee, but the law was seldom enforced. And so when businessmen would come traveling through Milwaukee, usually by ship, by steamer, or by sail, a couple things that they'd want. They'd want a good hot meal, and then they would want a lady companion for the evening. And they would go to River Street because that's where the brothels were. So you can still visit River Street, but now it's called Edison. Why is it called Edison? Well, the reason it's called Edison is because when the socialists took over the city in the early part of the 20th century, one of the things they wanted to do was clean up River Street. They wanted to shut it down. So what they did is they changed the name of the street as part of the shutdown to Edison. Two reasons for that. One is because as these travelers would come through, and by the way, River Street runs parallel to the river. So they would literally like get off the boats, and then they would start, these businessmen would start looking for River Street. If they were to start looking for River Street by changing the street signs to Edison, it makes it harder to find. The other reason to change the name to Edison Street, besides some subterfuge and trying to hide that this was River Street, is because this was one of the first streets in Milwaukee to have electricity. There was a power plant on the south end of the street. So that's why it's called Edison Street. And why did it get the electricity? Real simple. Because if they lit up the street at night, then some of these businessmen would think twice before entering a brothel because they'd be seen. Now there's a few sites in the book that really can't be seen. I mean, like the red light district, you can't see it, but you can visit it. You can know that it's there. You can say that you went to the red light district. You can feel real good about yourself. But here's the site of the former village of Humboldt. Now, there are a lot of what I would call ghost towns in Milwaukee County. Now, what I mean by a ghost town is not that it's inhabited by ghosts or anything, but really what it is a town that was never actually officially recognized as a town, but rather provided some services to people, and the residents thought of themselves as a town. They thought of themselves as a village. And so Humboldt is one example. Humboldt was at the intersection of the Milwaukee River and Capitol Drive. This is in the late 19th century. It was a highly German population. It was a farm community with a limited industrial base. There was actually some manufacturing there. And eventually it died out just because of the distance to the city of Milwaukee. But why is it called Humboldt? Well, because Humboldt was a famous German scientist from the 19th century. So we have Humboldt Park on the south side, and then we have Humboldt Boulevard or Avenue over in the River West neighborhood. And the reason that Humboldt Avenue is called Humboldt Avenue is because that's the street that connected the city of Milwaukee to the village of Humboldt. But as you can see, there's nothing left. I took a photograph of where it used to be, but it is still kind of neat to go check it out. I also profile several other ghost towns in the book. Mechanicsville was on the same site as Humboldt, but it died out even earlier. There's also Williamsburg, which is now a neighborhood on the northern end of River West. There's New Colne, which is over by the airport, and there's also the old hamlet of St. Martin, which St. Martin's Road and the St. Martin's Fair are named after. All that stuff's in Franklin. And these were real places to people who lived there. They had post offices, churches, schools, and everything else except for officially legalized, recognized governments. Root Creek is one of my favorites, and that's in there too. And so this is the second ghost town slide. I do a whole article all about Root Creek. Root Creek was basically, depending on how you defined it, was anywhere from South 43rd Street to 128th Street, from Greenfield Avenue south to Grange, depending on who you're talking to. And over time, the area became smaller and smaller as the city of Milwaukee encroached on it. Eventually, West Allis incorporates, Hales Corners incorporates, and Root Creek became smaller and smaller until now basically it's the triangular-shaped neighborhood in Milwaukee. But there's still a few artifacts left. There are still several Cream City brick buildings in Oak Creek. You can go see them. There's an impressive display of 3 of them at the the triangle where Morgan Avenue, 51st Street, and Howard Avenue meet. There's also the old Blessed Sacrament Cemetery. Blessed Sacrament Church still exists. It's on about 41st Street in Oklahoma, I want to say. Well, this is the cemetery from the original church. And if you go into the northwest corner of the cemetery, you can, I mean, if you're lucky, you can still occasionally find a brick from the church's foundation. And over in the northeast corner, I have found graves that date back to people who were born in the 18th century, actually. And so there are some actually very, very old graves there. I'm not sure if they're taking anyone anymore. I know I saw my last burial there maybe about 10 years ago, that they were still putting someone in the ground. My understanding is that if your family's still around and that they have space that they're not using, that you can still put someone there, but I'm not sure how active the cemetery is. So you can actually go ahead and check it out. It is identified with a sign, which was mostly because it was unidentified for a long time. And then a local historian who likes writing about cemeteries, who shall remain nameless, petitioned the Archdiocese of Milwaukee to put in a sign that worked. I, of course, in Milwaukee, we love to eat food. And so I tell several stories in the book about food. This is perhaps one of the most controversial ones because everyone wants to know what was the first frozen custard stand? Was it Kopp's? Was it Leon's? Or perhaps maybe it was Gillies? Well, the answer is it was Gillies. Gillies is the oldest, okay? Gilly actually trained Leon in how to make custard. Leon had been the janitor over at Gillies. And so Leon was trained by Gilly, and then Elsa Kopp actually came third. And Elsa Kopp started her business. It was originally located on the north side. Now there's 3 locations in the Milwaukee area. But she started that business because her husband could no longer work due to Parkinson's disease. And so she had to go to work. And so she created this great custard chain. And Leon's and Gillies are both great too. But don't go to Gillies on a Tuesday. They're not open. I warn people about that in the book. One other food, and there's several stories about food and drink, but I like to tell this story. Whenever I travel and if I want to get a slice of pizza, it always has a thick crust. And when I was younger, I could never figure out, like I'm in my 20s and I'm traveling, at the time, this was like 25 years ago. And I can't figure out, why is it Milwaukee only seems to have thin crust pizza? I mean, I grew up on thin crust pizza. Most of us probably did if you're from Milwaukee. And this is the reason why, okay? It all started with the Carodero Club in the 3rd Ward. And it's called Carodero because it was the fusion of the last names of the 2 owners. And what they decided to do was take over a tavern that had it was a 3-story building. It had rooming. It was a rooming house on the upper floors. But they took over this tavern on the south end of Broadway. And after a few months, they wanted to try to change things up. And they were going to start serving this new food called pizza. So they started making this pizza. And they experimented with different recipes until they came up with what you see on the right, okay, which is the classic Milwaukee crunchy pizza. But then they had a problem. How do they market this? I mean, there's radio, I suppose, but that costs money. Television is in its infancy. What do? So what they did is they made up several pizzas, took slices out to Wisconsin Avenue, and asked people who were leaving work, about to go home, would you like to try some pizza? And they'd get a lot of funny looks because nobody had ever heard of pizza. And in fact, in the beginning, people couldn't even pronounce the word. Is it pizza? Like, is it pizza? Like, how do you even pronounce that? So they said, well, here's a slice of pizza. Okay, the next question they got is, how do I eat this? So then the owners of the Caradero Club had to show these businessmen, well, this is how you eat pizza. So they demonstrated how to hold it. You bite it in your mouth, and then you eat some more. People liked it. So then they said, well, if you want some more, here's where our business is. We're serving it every night of the week. Within a couple weeks, the place was packed. Eventually, the Caradero Club spread to locations in multiple parts of the city of Milwaukee. The original building burned down in 1978, but there's still a plaque there on one of the other buildings that tells you that this is where pizza was invented in Milwaukee. There's only one location left. It's over on 52nd and Vliet. You may have driven past it several times. It's got the big coffee cup that looks like it looks like it hit the roof. But it's excellent pizza. I was told I shouldn't say in the book that I think it's the best pizza in Milwaukee, that I'm supposed to be neutral. But I think it's the best pizza in Milwaukee. Go ahead, check it out. And the pizza that you see on the right, my wife and I did eat that pizza. So it was very, very good. So go check it out. It's some fantastic pizza. All right. This is how then I'm closing it out. This is the 10th one. This is my 10th story for the night. But this is an image from a book that was published by a man named Byron Price. Okay. Byron Price was a book publisher in the 1980s, and in 1982, he came out with this fantasy satire book that contained 12 paintings, such as the one you see here, and 12 poems. And in order to promote this book, what he did is he flew to 12 cities in America and buried a ceramic key inside a cask. And you're supposed to read the poem, and you're supposed to look at the painting, and the poem and the paintings do not match up. You have to hunt around in the book to find them. It's made it even harder. But you read the poem, you look at the painting, and that's supposed to give you clues as to where you are supposed to go. If you dig up the ceramic cask and find the ceramic key inside, you were supposed to send the key to Byron Price, who would then go get a real key, an actual key, that would go to a locked box. He would open up that particular locked box for that key, and inside would be a precious stone valued at a couple $1,000 that he would send you in the mail. Now, only 3 of the 12 have ever been found, and unfortunately, Byron died several years ago in a car accident, and all the jewels in their locked boxes were sold off to help the estate pay its bills. So at that point, only 2 of the treasures have been found. One has been found since then, or rather the cask has been found. So not really a treasure in the traditional sense of a treasure hunt, but still really fun to do. So if you're wondering what's going on in this image, the way this is interpreted is it's believed that that's City Hall standing in the back. And then you can see this juggler who's juggling a millstone, a flower, a walking stick, and a key. So if you look at the millstone, combine that with the walking stick and the key, you get Milwaukee. The flower, Byron liked to play on words, and so flower in this sense, Flower, pronounced flower, but he meant it as Flour, or at least that's the theory. And in the 19th century, Milwaukee was the biggest flour milling city in the country until eventually Minneapolis surpassed Milwaukee. But at the time, we were number 1. I'll let you, I'm not going to tell you the clues that are in the poem, because of course I want you to buy the book, but you can read the entire poem in my book. I've reproduced the poem there, and you can go on a treasure hunt of your own, but the park system, the county, the city, all ask you, please don't dig anything up. You can actually be fined for doing that. All right, so that being said, that's the end of my talk. I'm going to come back on the screen because my cat has left the room. And then we can go ahead and open it up for any questions.
Okay, the one that we have right now, and maybe we'll have some more, and then I have a couple as I was listening, is Edison Street by the Harp Bar in downtown Milwaukee.
Yep, that's the one. You can go get, if you don't want to go to the Heart Bar, if that's not your cup of tea, you got the Vagamon tacos. That's right there. And so go enjoy some tacos.
Yeah, it's so funny. Obviously haven't read the book because we don't have it yet, but a lady came into the store last week and she told me all about the this book of poems and the treasure, and I was like, I've never heard of that. Rabbit hole for sure. Went down it. Not really gonna run out and like hunt around. She said, oh, the treasure's in the box, but I feel better to know that like the treasure was already given away. But it's really interesting, and the poem is poems, I guess the 12 poems are really, really cool. Steve said the NML building you showed. Oh, okay. He's wondering if in the NM Lake Emily slide, if the Lake Emily is under, it's 720 East Wisconsin Avenue, right?
Yeah, so actually, so the building I showed is the one that I was able to get the copyright on. So there you go.
Yes.
So that's
yeah.
your answer.
Yeah,
So,
so it is the one that's looks like the temple front, and that's where Lake Emily is. It's the intersection of Van Buren and East Wisconsin Avenue. The one that you showed is the first NM building in Milwaukee, which we call the Loyalty Building, and today is the Hilton Garden Inn. So
correct.
those pesky copyrights. No surprise, though, they're very well. I mean, their literal company logo comes from those capitals. So no surprise they guard those Corinthian columns very judiciously. I'm going to take Linda's question and add a little bit of my own. So she asked how long it took you to research for the book. And I guess I would amend it to add like, how many of these things did you already, like when they approached you, did you think, oh, I can think of, I mean, because 84, that's quite a substantial number of things. So what did you already kind of know? And then how long did, to fill out the rest of it and do all the research? How long do you think?
Yeah, I knew a lot of these things for a while, so it wasn't actually that tough to research. I spent about 4 months writing the book, like off and on, which is a pretty quick turnaround time for a book. But I did crowdsource some of the topics, and one of the crowdsourced topics was the treasure of Byron Price, which like I had no knowledge of that one, and it's like I'm a Milwaukee historian, but I think since it's 1982, we don't really realize like that was 40 years ago, like that's history now. And so yeah, like I was out there looking for the treasure too for a while, and so like that was, so I'm trying to like retrace the steps and everything, and so that was a lot of fun, to say the least. Also, if you get the book, one of the topics I didn't cover in the presentation is I found the location of the old Milwaukee mafia headquarters, and so the building's been torn down, but there's a new building that's there, and it's located in the 3rd Ward. So buy the book, and then you could say you went to Milwaukee Mafia headquarters.
They're a very popular topic, I will say. And then what is your favorite entry in the book? You don't have to like explain it if you don't want to, but just like.
Yeah, no, I think probably the Byron Price treasure one. I like that one a lot just because I didn't know about it.
Yeah.
But other than that, I like the story of Dirty Helen. So like if those of you guys who don't know who Dirty Helen was, like she ran like the most notorious speakeasy in Milwaukee during Prohibition. And I like the story so much, even though you can't really go visit. It's a parking lot now. Like I went to the parking lot. Okay. So it's nothing really to visit, but I just thought that it was such a compelling story that I had to tell the story, even though there's nothing touristy to do. So I like that one a lot.
Nice. Excellent. Okay. Are there other questions from folks? I don't see any immediately. Well, we'll give them, I'll do the little like wrap up, and then if we get a last minute question, sneak it in under the wire.
Sure.
2-minute warning, everybody. Thank you very much, Jim, for sharing the great presentation and the stories. Yeah, seriously, the price thing, everyone should just buy the book and then go down the rabbit hole of that, because it's fascinating. Things you don't expect, and it's about multiple cities, I think you said, but like he picked all these different cities, so it's really cool.
Yeah, the Secret History book series is about multiple cities, but so then mine is 84 things just pertaining to Milwaukee. But then when you travel, if you want to, pick up another one of those books from Greedy Press and go check out some weird, interesting things.
Mm-hmm. And then shameless HMI plug, they're also coming out with Secret Wisconsin. So it's a different set of authors, and I believe different topics. I don't think there's overlap, or very little. But that's next week, Wednesday, November 15th at 5:30, also on Zoom. We'll record that one as well. And R. Miller, I don't know more than that, just said thank you so much for doing the presentation, and they enjoyed it.
Very happy to be here. Thanks for being such a great audience.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. Like I said, we'll send out an email when the talk is up, and so you can share it with people. And then we'll also email you when we have the book in our hot little hands, and it's available for you all to check out. Excellent. See, they're getting them in. Oh. Lori says, many thanks, and she hopes you sell a lot of books. Oh, I think Jim froze. Thank you all for joining us. Have a lovely evening.